Welcome back to our miniseries, the Lone Screenplay Winners, where we talk about films that solely won an Oscar for the writing categories. My name is Matthew Anderson, and today we have Jeffrey Kare on the podcast. How you doing, Jeffrey?
I'm doing good, Matt, and I hope you are too.
Yes, I am. My hearing in my left ear is gone to dust almost, but other than that, I think I'm doing good. But yeah, I should also preference to our listeners out there. We're recording this just a few days after the Oscars. I would have asked Jeffrey if we could record it before my flight over to Chicago because I was heading over there with some buddies to watch the Oscars, but it just didn't align with me, especially with work. So we just recorded as soon as I got back. So like my flight was literally yesterday. I did like as much sleep as I could as soon as I got home, and then here we are today, and I've been up since like 5 in the morning. So, um, but yeah, but other than that, yeah, no, yeah, I'm like I said, grateful that you were able to spend some time to be here on the show, and a really interesting pick, I must say. I guess we'll just get right into our episode, which is we're going to be discussing the 2020/21 film Promised Young Woman. We'll get to what happened there, or why I preference that date, so to speak. So yeah, we'll be discussing Promising Young Woman, which was written and directed by Emerald Fennell. It is a spoiler discussion, so if you have not seen the movie, I suggest you watch it first and then come back and watch it. Last time I checked, I think it was on Peacock, but it may not be there anymore. Anyways, here's our discussion. But first, a quick summary of the film. It's about a troubled young woman haunted by a traumatic past as she navigates balancing forgiveness and vengeance. And it stars Carey Mulligan, Bo Burnham's in it, Alison Brie, Clancy Brown, Jennifer Coolidge, Laverne Cox, who I forgot was in the movie. Connie Britton is also in it too. This was your pick, Jeffrey. I'm curious to know, out of all the films that gave you the list for that won just screenplay, why was it that this one stood out to you the most?
Oh, well, okay. When you reached out to me about coming on the show, there was definitely a few choices I would have loved to have talked about, and there's a few I was interested in discussing. But you asked me to what my first choice would be, and so I thought about it. And I chose Promising Young Woman partially because it just blew me away the first time I saw it via digital screener on the second to last day of 2020. So that was a big joy that came to me during the end of what was a rotten year for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely was. I mean yeah, that was like another year where we lost so many, family and friends and even celebrities that it was just like, what the hell? Like even like, I mean, we'll probably like briefly talk about this with the awards thing and such, but like even Chadwick Boseman, had died from nothing, anything from the pandemic issue or anything. It was just colon cancer he had gone through, and yeah, it was a rough year overall, and yeah, it really was. So you said you were blown away by it the first time around with Promising Young Woman. How was it for you on a rewatch? Was there anything about it that changed for you or made you go, oh, okay, it didn't age as well as I remembered, or like just like an overall general thoughts before we dive deep into some of the more, specific details of the movie?
Well, this was like my third time watching it, and it was on when I owned the Blu-ray, so I didn't have to search around streaming services for it. And honestly, it's still just as brilliant as I remembered it being from the first time I saw it. So nothing's changed for me, even though I have a feeling it's not the case for you, judging by your letterboxd.
Yeah, I will say, yeah, for anyone who as soon as Jeffrey mentioned the letter, I figured, yeah, it's like every time, when I do these episodes, if you follow my letterbox, you know where I am with my rating on some of these movies, where it's like, okay, well, we know where Matt thinks of this, where he aligns. I will say the first time around, I liked it a fair amount. I thought it was like a pretty decent like directorial debut for Emerald Fennell, who I honestly did think had some promise to her, and I still think she does on a visual standpoint. And obviously some of my opinions about the film have stayed consistent. I like the I do like the pop's, visual style that Emerald Fennell offers for the movie. I think Carey Mulligan is really, really good in the film. Um, and I thought Emerald Fennell, she got better as a filmmaker and as a storyteller as the film went on for me. Uh, but overall, on my rewatch, I came away from it thinking it was decent. It wasn't anything spectacular, in my opinion. Like, I do admire the attempts of Emerald Fennell tackling a subject matter like this, but at the same time, knowing what I know of her now after seeing her next film, Saltburn, which that was one that was very like a lot of a lot of flash, but no real substance to it, so to speak, for me. I did look at this and be like, you know what? She got admittedly, she found a story that worked just enough, and the fact that these characters are not, you're not expecting, obviously with this kind of story and how it's structured, they're not supposed to be particularly deep per se, but at the same time, you understand where each of these characters are coming from. You empathize with them, especially with Carey Mulligan's character. You totally understand where she's coming from. But when you see something like Saltburn, where it felt more like a little bit of like that, it's kind of like ego stroke that some filmmakers have, where it's like, I've now reached the point where I'm like, I'm getting better with my visuals and filmmaking, but I'm not. I lost some of the more storytelling, creative aspects that I did so well in the first time around. There, I don't know. It did kind of sour a little bit of the experience for me with Promising Young Woman, but at the same time, though, there were other things about it I noticed on a rewatch that I thought, okay, this didn't age as well as I remembered, for me at least. But yeah, but overall though, like I still think it's a decent movie. It's nothing. It's not a terrible movie whatsoever. Because like I said, I've already mentioned a couple things about it I did like, and we'll talk more about the other aspects of the film that I admired Emerald Fennell tackling, especially for this being her like directorial debut. I think is incredible.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. No, and literally this, I was just so amazed by how in her feature directorial debut, she managed to pull off a, this kind of tone where it's so dark, twisted, comedic thriller with that surprisingly has a good amount of heart. So yeah, I was and now I liked Saltburn but didn't love it. So I mean, so I clearly prefer Promising Young Woman, but yeah, I mean, of course, as we see, as filmmakers progress from movie to movie, and well, especially with increasing budgets, well, there does tend to be, I guess, a lot. Well, well, it tends to feel different, is what I'll say.
Oh yeah, and believe me, like Saltburn is a movie that everyone has been divided on. Either you love it or you hate it, and I'm just one of those people who, when I saw it, I just like, I don't get it. What's the purpose of this? Yeah, it's a really good looking movie, but I came away from it so frustrated by the fact that again, she was so, again, kind of like kind of up, had like this big ego to her, but yeah, it's still, there are elements of this film, Promising Young Woman, that I do like, that sort of that balance that she does provide, especially with when we're just jumping into the movie, as a whole. One of the many aspects I liked about the film, again, I like the pop visual style to it. It's a very colorful looking movie with how she uses pinks, reds, and like very bright and like visually striking colors to the film. It works really well. Even some of the cinematography at times can be quite gorgeous for what it is, despite it being like a very, like, what I think it was like a $10 million independent movie for this. And I think it's incredible with what she was able to do with that. And even some of the visual choices she has in the film, such as introducing us to Cassie at the bar when she, quote unquote, is passed out drunk. But in reality, it's just a setup of, this being like a nightly ritual almost of her going out to various bars, getting all these guys and tricking them to, have sex with her while she's drunk, and then open up, be like, oh yeah, no, you actually are kind of a monster, and you should, like, this is the lesson you should learn, and such. What were some of your takes on that aspect, or anything about the opening section of the film?
Well, yeah, in the opening scene where, Cassie appears drunk, I was with the men in the bar nearby, convinced that was the case. And then when she revealed that it was all an act when she was about to have sex with Adam Brody, I was like, whoa. I mean, that was the moment we knew that her character really means business.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. And the one I will say, even though I'm kind of torn on this a little bit, Jeffrey, and I don't know if you'll agree with me on this next one. I kind of wish that for some of these victims, or at least some of these, I should say, rapists, so to speak. I kind of wish that the film had been a bit more darker with its tone, especially with that first kill with Adam Bro. Well, not first kill, but like first, quote unquote, you know, victim, I guess, for Adam Brody. Because when I first saw it, I was watching it, and you see her walking down, doing the whole walk of shame in in her bare feet, and then she has like she's eating like this pastry donut or whatever, and she's got like the it was I don't know what kind of pastry it was. It was some kind of donut, but it was like red juice that came out of it and started, you know, uh, sliding down her arm, and I was just thought to myself, oh, okay, it's visually striking for sure, and I kind of wish for me they had established that not only is she going this far, but she's actually willing to even kill some of these people. Because I think that's what I imagined the first time around when I saw it. It's been like years since I saw this movie, but I'm a little bit torn on that, because I'm like, on the one hand, I would have liked it more if she went that extreme with the character, but at the same time, you kind of need that, that sense of like, I guess, redemption that she kind of goes on, or that idea of letting go, because we find out later on in the film that she is essentially doing this as like a I don't know if you would call it like a coping mechanism, but to me it came across as that way to me, as like a way of like, for trying to forgive herself for not being there for her best friend who was assaulted and raped by a bunch of college kids at a frat party. um and it's very much it's a traumatic experience in of itself, to begin with, but yeah, and the fact that she was able to, she did everything she could to care for her afterwards, and she's no longer with with her family and friends, her buddy, her friend, by the way. And I definitely saw this as like, again, yeah, like like, yeah, so anyway, so she goes, so basically what I'm trying to say is that I'm a little bit torn on that, of like whether or not the like Emerald Fennell should have written her more as like almost like she's able to go to the lengths sometimes of being a serial killer, or towards these people who try to attack her, or just go with the way the film is trying to do, because again, I don't know, do you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, and I still haven't heard the audio comment. I still haven't heard Emerald Fennell's audio commentary on the Blu-ray, so I don't know if
Okay.
she explained any, decisions behind that. But I'm guessing she must have wanted to leave it up for audience interpretation or something.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that's true. I mean, and to be fair, the movie it is shot and presented that way at times, of like leaving the, yeah, just leaving the ambiguity, because even later on we get to Allison Brie, when Carey Mulligan meets up with Allison Brie at the restaurant, and they have a conversation, and she's, Allison Brie is just like pissed drunk, to where Carey Mulligan leaves her and walks up to this guy and says, money's in the envelope, here's the key, uh and do it, just do exactly what I said. And we never really see what happens behind closed doors, but we're led to believe that the guy didn't, rape Allison Brie, only to make it, think psychologically, oh, she was assaulted by the guy, but in reality it's like, no, 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 she only paid me to do this, to make it, feel that way. But yeah, but that is true though. The other aspect of the film I want to talk about, actually, we've already mentioned Carey Mulligan before. What'd you think of her in this film?
Oh, it's such magnetic performance. I mean, It is easily some of the most impressive work she's ever done. I mean, she gets to show off quite a range of personalities as her character, from being seductive to having her share of empathy as well. Like when we learn later on that she's mainly doing all this for revenge of the death of her friend Nina, that really gave some much needed humanity to her character. And not to mention that the way she does some investigating throughout the film is so unique.
Yeah, she's really good. I've only seen as of this recording, Kara Milligan has been nominated 3 times already, with An Education, this, and Maestro. I've only seen her last 2 nominations. I have yet to see An Education. I should get on it immediately after this movie. So down the road, I will watch it. But yeah, that's a movie I've been wanting to watch for the last couple of years, and now I'm like, okay, now I really need to watch this performance from her, because I think that was considered her like breakout performance, or made a lot of people be like, ooh, this Carey Mulligan actress is like really good, and I kind of want to see her more now, because she had been in supporting roles before, but I remember in Education was the first one that again just really broke her out as like a lead star. Um, but yeah, no, she's incredible in this too. And I did think for a while, I thought, yeah, she's pretty good in this, but really one of the best moments of the movie for me, and I don't know if you'll agree with me on this, Jeffrey, but my favorite scene of the movie that shows exactly what I wish that, like, because there's a couple scenes throughout the film that I wish the film had this like not just creativity but tension building done so well, like all throughout the film, was when Cassie goes to the dean's office, and it's established right before then that she dresses up as a makeup a makeup artist for like music videos, and tricks this like teenage high school girl to be like, hey, I'm trying to get to this restaurant here. I don't know where it's at. I'm supposed to be like a makeup artist for this band. And the girl's like, oh my god, I love this band so much. And so she drops her off at the restaurant, and then we end up getting to the dean's office, and goes through this whole elaborate thing of like of the he said she said conversation they end up getting into. And what I love about it is they establish how they're like um that's essentially, she gets to the point where she tells the dean, oh, by the way, I picked up your daughter from school, and I took her over to the same dorm room that the boys were at when they assaulted my friend years ago. And she has this worry, and she even talks about how I think they even had vodka when I dropped her off over there. And for me, I just like, it was such great tension building from the editing and even from the performances themselves. And again, Carey Mulligan was fantastic in that scene. I loved how very cold she was, and I would love to see her play a villain, almost like a diabolical villain who's like this kind of character almost down the road. But I don't know if she has actually. But anyways, but yeah, no, I thought that scene was incredible. Like everything about it, I thought was like, oh my god, this is really good work. Well, I assume you because I see you nodding a little bit, and I see you're in agreement with me, right?
Oh yeah, that scene with Jerry Mulligan meeting with Connie Britton is, full of so much tension, and yeah, I agree, that was brilliant.
Yeah. And the other aspect of the film that I was really impressed with, or at least I thought was like, okay, I like now I see what you're trying to do, Emerald Fennell, and it was introducing us to Bo Burnham in the film, with that whole subplot, and I did like, even though I did think it was a little bit sloppy for my taste, but I understood what she was trying to do about establishing how not every nice guy you meet is every even all the nice guys have skeletons in their closet. It's just a matter of how high the pile is, so to speak. And I like that they established Bill Burnham as this like nice, guy, and he's like very respectful, he's very calming, and then when you see them end up getting together, they're like, oh right, it's like a little, meet cute almost, like you'd see in other romantic comedies. And it isn't until Allison Brie brings the footage to Carey Mulligan's attention, and then she goes through the footage, which I again really showcased how great of an actress Carey Mulligan is, where we don't see the assault on video, we only hear it, and it's through Carey Mulligan's reactions where we have her find out that her boyfriend knew about this, didn't say anything, and didn't even bring this up once whatsoever. And I thought that was like a very genuine, like, for me, like a heartbreaking moment for sure, because you're like, oh man, that sucks, because this, because like the audience, we all thought, well, just like Cassie, we all thought that he was a nice guy, and that he didn't have many problems. He didn't have this like dark, fucked up side to him. But the fact that he was just like he was like a bystander, just letting this happen, not even doing anything about it, uh, and it's just it's heartbreaking. And I just, yeah, I just thought, like, she did a great. I thought Emerald Fennell, in terms of the writing for that story of it, or at least that conversation part of it, I thought was really good.
Yeah, and to a point you made a minute or two ago. Well, I read last night that the the film production crew purposefully chose male actors who previously played characters known as good or wholesome to reinforce the idea that predators can be anyone. That so that that was a
Okay.
conscious yeah. And now,
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, and it works. I mean, if you had like an obvious sleazeball, a guy who plays those kind of roles, and it's like, well, okay, we kind of figured he was like such an obvious, bad person. Um, but yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, and I also remember Emerald Fennell mentioned in an interview that she chose Carey Mulligan because she knew she wanted someone for the lead who is not someone you would normally think of for this kind of movie. And of course, Mulligan at that point, well, we of course mainly come to know her from appearing in period dramas and such.
yeah. Oh yeah, and wasn't she on Pride and Prejudice from 2005?
Yeah, she played one of the sisters.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting. Okay. Wow. Pride and
Yeah,
Prejudice
which
is,
Yeah,
wow.
which was the first of three movies that I can think of that she did with Rosamund Pike. The other two being In Education and Saltburn.
Oh yeah, that's right. They were in Saltburn. I forgot about that. Yeah. Shit. Okay. Um. Yeah. So, but yeah, no. I'm trying to think if there's any, because while I'm going through my notes, is there any other notes that you wanted to bring up for Promising Young Woman, that
Oh,
you wanted to address in terms of the film?
not well. I got some on Bo Burnham. Like I found him to be very likable in his role. I also loved his chemistry with Terry Mulligan, and it may have had their ups and downs, but it really grounded the film from all the mayhem going on in the plot. And the scene like the scene where he recognizes her late at night putting a stop to one of her schemes was unpredictable, as was their final scene together where she's threatening him at the hospital.
Yeah, no, yeah, and again, having Bo Burnham in a movie in that kind of role, as you even pointed out, it actually, it kind of throws us off balance again, to like, oh yeah, this guy is not, he's not the goody two shoes that we thought he would be. And I'm pretty sure even Emerald Fennell stated that she put the song "Stars Are Bright" by Paris Hilton as a way of like having, like, in her eyes, be like, if someone were to sing that song, it's like, oh yeah, no, they're not a bad person, they're like this, this cute little, lovable guy, so to speak, for her. um so I thought that was pretty interesting. I also wanted to bring up, well, actually, before I go any further, is there any other notes that you want to bring up for Promising Young Woman? Because I got a few that I could get through, but I want to hear you go on for a bit with some of your notes.
Okay, well, the scene where Bo Burnham is interviewed by the police later on, he really got to express sympathy for Cassie, and also, of course, we'll talk more about this, but right from the whole sequence where Cassie shows up at the bachelor party posing as a stripper in what has become her now iconic look, lots of
Yeah.
twists and turns come about.
Yeah, yeah, that was definitely one that yeah, we'll get to the party. I'll put a pin on that for just a moment, because I there's a fair amount we could talk about with that scene. Uh, what I wanted to bring up also was, and I forgot he was in the movie, Alfred Molina.
Oh
I
yeah,
I
yeah.
thought Alfred Molina was pretty good. He's only in it for like a scene or two, and that's it. And he does the best of what he can. And yeah, it was just like, yeah, he's really good in this. And I correct me if I'm wrong, but Alfred Molina was also in Education, right?
Well, yeah, I was kind of mentioned that, the unexpected appearance of Alfred Molina is interesting to watch, as he and Mulligan previously played father and daughter in An Education, and here they play completely different characters.
Oh wow. Okay, yeah, because I could have sworn I saw him in An Education when I saw the trailer, or I saw like there was like an Oscar clip that year for An Education, and they were showing off all the screenplay excerpts, and they were showing like clips with it. Um, and yeah, but that's really interesting. Okay, um, and then what else was there? I was going to bring up about the movie. Yeah, and and I also want to bring up the Molly Shannon character, or at least that scene I thought was really good. It was like a nice little moment, and it played. It felt very naturalistic. Like Molly like her character was very happy to see Cassie again, but at the same time she was like, "What are you doing? Like you got to let this go." Because I think it's just best that we just move on from the past and just move forward. Because right then and there, Molly's character, she knew that Cassie was she still had that guilty conscience in her from not being able to save her friend. Uh, and I thought that was a really nice. It was like it was a good moment, and I was like, yeah, again, these actors are really good. And even though, again, just like Molina, she's only got one scene in the movie, and she does the best of what she can. Um, so I thought she was great. And what else was there about it? Yeah, that was pretty much it for what I wanted to say for the first two acts of the film. And then yeah, we could just jump right into our finale with as you mentioned, we get to a pretty interesting orchestral version of Toxic, with the violin, which I swear to God, like every time I watch that scene or I think of the movie, I always think of that orchestral, with the string version. I really like it. It's like it's a really good choice. I don't know whose idea it was to create it, whether it was the composer Anthony Willis or Emerald Fennell or whoever it was. Like that was a really good decision to do, especially with her in the nurse outfit. I thought that was great. Um, and yeah, and then the editing for the for her trying to get the boys drunk for I guess she had like some sort of sleeping uh whatever it was. She doused the alcohol. It's pretty much implied she doused the alcohol to the boys to make sure that they slept through the whole night. But I like some of the cuts that they made there, and yeah, I thought that was like a really solid scene in of itself. And even some of the men there, I actually was like, oh yeah, I recognize some of these guys here in other movies. And yeah, like I remember one of them who was past the alcohol. He was in The Big Short. He played one of the hedge funds who was bragging about the fact that they were taking all these investments and such that Steve Carell meets at the bar. Um, yeah, but yeah. So anyway, so your thoughts on this section of the movie?
Yeah, okay, so the way it begins with Cassie confronting Al Monroe, it looked like she was once again going to succeed, all before he suffocates her to death with a pillow. One of many
Yeah,
things I didn't see coming at all.
yeah, and that's a moment that I think like that in of itself is very much divided on like I could see why a lot of audiences were divided on this ending even rewatching it again like it doesn't really give you a satisfying ending, but then it kind of does with the whole everything was sort of pre-planned like just enough to where she wore she wore her and uh I forgot her friend's Cassie's friend's name was Nina, I believe it was. and
Yes.
and she wore the one the one side of the necklace, because if you put them together it forms into a heart. Again, another really good visual striking visual from Emerald Fennell as a filmmaker, or as a storyteller I should say. And I like that she's wearing the Nina part of the necklace, while the Cassie necklace is brought to Laverne Cox, who is the store owner where Carey Mulligan works at a coffee shop, and so and so yeah, so I was, weirdly enough, I was okay. Like when I rewatched it again, I was actually okay with the unsatisfying resolution to it, just because I'm like, yeah, this is Emerald Fennell is kind of hammering in the message of, you go down this path, this path of revenge. It'll only, come out and bite you in the ass, so to speak, and you're not going to come back from it, because once she found out about about her boyfriend being a part of this whole situation, it's like, okay, now she's back into her crazed phase, her not crazed phase, but like her going back into this her revenge motivations that she had beforehand. And so and now that she knows who was responsible for assaulting Nina, she's like, all right, I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna, carve, Nina's name into your stomach. And yeah, so I thought that was, it was an interesting bit for at least for the ending, and it was, admittedly for me at least, it was ruined a little bit by um again, that whole pre-packaged or pre-planned message, like the scheduled tweet, messages they got on Bo Burnham's phone, and then we get all this like investigation. All the cops find Cassie's body, because after she's suffocated, she ends up getting killed by the boys. I assume you were shocked by that she just burned to a crisp.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and although if you ask me, it wasn't as shocking as when Ryan eventually received Cassie's scheduled text messages at the wedding and then the police arrived. I mean, that to me is like the ultimate payback.
Yeah, and I think it was very intentional for Emerald Fennell to create some sort of satisfaction for the audience. Which again, I have already stated before. I'm kind of torn on that. Like I kind of liked it when it does provide this unsatisfying, conclusion, and then it does provide a satisfying one with the whole text thing. So I'm a bit torn on that. I don't know. But yeah, I'm yeah. So, anyways, yeah, I'm trying to think if there's any other notes I had on the movie. While I go through the rest of my notes, is there anything you want to bring up for the movie as well?
Well, I literally just learned this last night that in the first draft, it actually ended when Cassie's body was burned, yet financiers hated the fact that it had a negative ending, so Emerald Fennell initially considered an ending where Cassie appears at the wedding and kills the men responsible, but she deemed it unrealistic. And
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, she settled on an ending where Cassie had a backup revenge plan, as she felt Cassie would be thorough in her planning and would be aware that she could die. And Fennell also felt that having Al apprehended at his wedding would reflect Cassie's sense of humor.
Okay, all right. That then yeah, that explains a lot why we got the ending we got. There actually was one other thing I wanted to bring up, and we didn't mention this. We mentioned very actually, I don't think we mentioned this at all. I personally liked the interaction that Cassie had throughout the film with her parents, particularly with her mother, who was oh god, who was the
Jennifer
woman?
Coolidge.
Jennifer Coolidge and Clancy Brown. I really like their interaction with each other, especially when Cassie has her birthday, and she mentions about how Jennifer Coolidge is worried about her daughter. She doesn't, go out with many of her friends. She doesn't have a boyfriend. She doesn't have life going on, and it felt, even though she did snap a little bit too much at her daughter, it did feel like the way Jennifer Coolidge played that role. It really did feel believable enough, because she was worried about her daughter. Even Clancy Brown at one point, when they have, Bo Burnham come over, Ryan, you said it was, I believe. Yeah, it
Yes.
was Ryan. He comes over for supper, and after they're done, they said they mentioned the fact that they're really happy that they got the old Cassie back before, all this had emerged, and it was a nice moment. I like that, and that's definitely something that Emerald Fennell, as you mentioned, like she's trying to bring that sense of heart into the story. that you care and you like these characters enough, or at least you understand where they're coming from. So that way, when shit hits the fan, it's like, oh shit, well, okay, that's takes a dark turn. And yeah, and I think she does a decent job with the movie overall. Before we get into any final thoughts, once again, your overall thoughts on the movie.
Well, I said it the first time I saw this movie, and I'll say it again. Even the end results to me are so freaking awesome.
Nice. Yeah, that's yeah, that's sometimes it's just like, yeah, that's all you need to say. It's just like, yeah. Um, yeah, but yeah, for me, like Jeffrey said in the beginning, we pretty much said, what our overall thoughts were at the beginning of like, what our takes were. Jeffrey, clearly really likes it a lot more than I did. I thought it was decent, nothing amazing, and you know what? That's fine. I'm glad at least one of us was passionate about this movie, because I always it's always fun when we have differing opinions with with guests I have on here, or if we agree or we disagree, or whatever the case may be, because for me, regardless of whatever episode it is I'm recording for, I always love it when at least one of us is passionate. That way we get some much more interesting conversation out of it than just be like, yeah, this is how I felt about the movie. Anyways, that's it.
Yeah, I too absolutely prefer, differing opinions on a discussion because it's a lot more fun to listen to.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, again, like if you were to just, again, like I said before, you just have like a very plain, boring discussion. Like, yeah, this is what I thought of the movie. That's it. And then it's like, okay, well then, why do I want to listen to this conversation? I'll go to someone else who has a much more interesting opinion on it. Anyways, so yeah, so before we sign off on the show, I want to get into our award discussion talk. We're gonna get into on this, and I think we have a lot that we could talk about with this. So before I give you the mic, I'm gonna just preference to our audience that Promising Young Woman had premiered at the Sundance Film Festival in 2020 with an original release date set for April later that year. However, as we alluded to earlier in the show, due to the pandemic, it was switched from Christmas. It was switched from April to Christmas Day, and was able to compete for awards due to the Academy allowing extended time for films to be finished and get nominated. I think what was it? The ceremony was like in April or something,
Yes,
and nominations didn't drop until like February, I think. So it gave
or it
us
might have
plenty
been
of time.
or it might have been
I'm sorry.
early March.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah. No, that adds up actually. Yeah, that adds up. So yeah, so of the nominations this film got, it got 4 Golden Globe nominations, 6 Critics' Choice nominations, including 2 wins for lead actress and original screenplay, 6 BAFTA nominations, including 2 wins for British film and original screenplay. It got an Editors Guild in the comedy category nomination. It got a Producers Guild nomination for Best Picture there, a Writers Guild original screenplay win for Emerald Fennell. And it also got a SAG nomination for Carey Mulligan and a Directors Guild of America nomination for Emerald Fennell, which we'll get into in just a second. But I should also bring up that this was also a fairly divided Oscar race for lead actress, wouldn't you say? Because everyone except Vanessa Kirby got a major televised award. Andra Day got Golden Globe. Carey Mulligan, as I said, got Critics' Choice. SAG went to Viola Davis for Ma Rainey, and then you had Frances McDormand winning the BAFTA. So I want to ask, uh, why do you think this only walked away with original screenplay?
Wow, great question. I mean, well, if you look at, I'll save lead actress for last, but for the other 3 categories it was nominated in, now, well, okay, as an avid follower of Next Best Picture, and remember Matt Neglia mentioned early on that season how he was suspecting Nomadland would go the route of Boyhood and Roma, these critical favorites that were early frontrunners in their respective years, but when more people within the industry eventually caught up with them, they felt that was it? Nothing happens by the end. Yet Nomadland really swept the season, winning every single Best Picture prize. I mean, the movie itself was also very relevant at the time, where so many people were out of work due to COVID-19, so it was connecting with audiences on a very personal level. Although I remember New York Times projectionist Kyle Buchanan tweeted that Promising Young Woman was apparently racking up a lot of number one votes, which was more than he expected. So, I mean, it's possible that it might have been the distant runner-up to Nomadland, but again, that film was just a juggernaut. Now, for Best Director, now Chloe Zhao was not only a lock for the nomination, but also the win all season long. So Emerald Fennell making it in was remarkable, given that there had never been two women nominated for Best Director in the same year prior to that, nor since then. So Fennell clearly wasn't competitive for the win, so her making it in was, well, yeah, the Best Director nomination for was pretty much the award. And Best Film Editing, well, okay. Now that was, oh yeah, Best Film Editing was a very tricky race to figure out, and it was always down to Sound of Metal and Trial of the Chicago 7, with the former winning out in the end, so Promising Young Woman wasn't a factor. Now,
Yeah.
as for why it only won original screenplay, well, it was simply the most original movie of the lineup, which, even though they don't always prevail, well, still. So, sometimes if you have a film that's clearly the most original in the best original screenplay category, that tends to stick out more. So, it was, yeah, so, I mean, plus, I believe you mentioned this on a previous episode about Pulp Fiction with Jack Mahane's how,
Yep.
screenplay awards, specifically original, tends to go to the new cool kids on the block, which Emerald Fennell certainly fit that mold.
I see someone did their research. Good job, Jeffrey. I'm very proud. Yeah. I was gonna bring that up with the cool kids pick, and on top of that, I mean, even Jack Mahanes, I mean, once again, he fucking called Anatomy of a Fall, and it ties back into Promised Young Woman and another film we'll get into down the road with our latest Lone Screenplay winner, Conclave. Uh, it was a mystery suspense thriller with lots of twists and turns. And those don't always translate to Oscar wins, but when they do work really well for voters, that usually is what gets the Oscar win for screenplay. Especially with even The Usual Suspects was like another one. Witness, I think, was another one 2 years ago. Black Klansman's another one. God, yeah, there's a lot of these like lone screenplay winners that have done it. And yeah, it's really I can't wait to get around to some of them. But yeah, we'll get to lead actress in a moment though. What I find really interesting is that you and I, as of this recording, we could not. I don't know if you were able to find anything since I asked this question to you off air. I could not find a reason why Emerald Fennell was able to get into DGA lineup for the theatrical side, but not get into first time feature. Like I'd have to assume it was because of a submission thing where they only submitted it for feature film and not first time feature film, right? Like I'd have to assume because
Well,
because I couldn't find
well,
anything about it. Like what was the reason why she didn't get in there?
either that or because it was such a banner year for feature directorial debuts that maybe voters just want to spread it off. We'll put Emerald Fennell in the feature director category, so we wouldn't have to compromise any of the other options for directorial debut.
That's true. Yeah, but yeah, no, it's just I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to bring up because we'll get to lead actress in a moment because I know we have you probably have a lot of thoughts on that, but I'm trying to think of anything else I want to bring up. Editing,
Well,
yeah, we kind of figured Promised Young Woman wasn't going to win editing just because it's not the kind of film to do it. And you're right though, it was between Chicago 7 and Sound of Metal, but looking back, it pretty much was going to be Sound of Metal the whole way, just because of the fact that it had the sound editing combo. It got the BAFTA win. It doesn't always translate, as we just saw with Conclave and Vice, but sometimes it does really, like, if it's just that flashy enough, or that if it leaves such a strong impact on viewers and voters, then something like Sound of Metal, it's like, okay, now we know why it won the category, because when you see how precise its cuts are within how it's utilizing the sound to its advantage, it's like, okay, it kind of makes sense. The Sound of Metal won not just sound but also film editing as well. So, yeah, um, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry.
and I actually called Sound of Metal's editing win because of the whole how strong the stat was at that point, of how every winner in that category since Born Ultimatum back in 2007 at least had a corresponding sound nomination, while every editing winner since Gravity in 2013 also won a sound award. And especially after Sound of Metal won the BAFTA, which, like the American Academy, well, that category is voted on by the organization's entire membership, but most of them aren't as intimately familiar with the craft of editing.
That's true. Yeah. And we all knew that even though editing sometimes does tie into the best picture winners, we just, like, literally 2 nights ago we just saw Honora upset in editing. Um yeah, it's pretty interesting to see something, the fact that, like, Chloe Zhao, she had 4 nominations for picture, director, screenplay, and editing, and she still couldn't even win that prize. And they ended up going with the film that impressed voters the most, which was Sound of Metal. Even though, again, they're not they may not be that knowledgeable of editing. They're like, oh, okay, I guess, sure, why not, um so yeah, so lead actress. I'm gonna let you take the floor on this first. So did you predict Frances McDormand?
No, I predict. Well, okay. No, I did not predict Francis. I settled on Kerry Mulligan for. Let
Okay.
me pull up my predictions here, but yeah, I definitely could never forget how all over the place that race was, and a number of predictors were thinking it was between Kerry as well as Viola Davis for Rainey's Black Bottom, and while Francis did win the BAFTA, many predictors didn't put too much stock into that for the following reasons. I mean, she was only one of 2 Best Actress Oscar nominees, the other being Vanessa Kirby, to have been recognized there, so it's unknown how she would have done had Davis and or Mulligan been in contention. People thought Frances's performance in Nomadland would be too subdued to win compared to the showier work of her competition, and she had just won a second Oscar for 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri 3 years prior, and she was already going to receive a third as a producer on Nomadland, so predictors didn't think Academy members were going to go back to an acting category that quickly. Yet kudos to Josh Parham of Next Best Picture for calling it, because,
Yep.
well, yeah, well, when you have such a divided race, it's probably best to go with the nominee who's almost a stronger contender, which he accomplished yet again with predicting Mikey Madison for Nora over Demi Madison in The Substance recently.
Demi Moore, you mean?
Oh, why? Did I
I think
say
I think you said
something?
Demi Madison.
Well, Mikey
That's all right.
Madison and Honora over Demi Moore in The Substance, just in
Yeah.
case.
Yeah. By the way, Josh Parham, if you're listening to this, I love you. Thank you so much. I also predicted Mikey Madison too. But that's
Yeah.
another conversation we could have about that. But yeah, no, yeah, he was right though. Yeah, I think Ryan McQuaid was another one who predicted Frances McDormand as well. There were a fair amount of other predictors who predicted
Oh,
Frances McDormand. But you're right though. Like, we're having a weird habit of the lead acting races this decade so far, with the exception of Will Smith, who is the only one to have swept all the precursors and won the Oscar. The only one to do it. And everyone else had won either just BAFTA, they won like another prize here or there, or they were just like you said, they were in the overall stronger film that was like the best picture frontrunner or was like a runner up to best picture. Because even Anthony Hopkins, which I didn't have the balls to do it on the night of, I should have though. But I warned a couple of my buddies after I saw The Father that Hopkins was gonna, like, he actually could beat Bozeman at the Oscars, and then he did it, and I thought, holy shit, he did it. So that was like a big lesson I learned. Even last year with Emma Stone beating out Lily Gladstone, I thought, oh shit, okay, next year I'm like, okay, if we're not doing a sweeper, and if SAG and BAFTA split up, like, that's the other thing too about SAG and BAFTA, is that they split up. I do weirdly enough think the race was probably down to Carey Mulligan and Frances McDormand, because I don't think enough people had seen Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, like the idea of a non-Best Picture nominee to go home with 2 lead acting prizes is very strange. So yeah, I still think it was probably down to those two, but I also do wonder if the fact that Frances, again, she was in the stronger movie, and she's not in a movie that's as potentially divisive as Promising Young Woman was, so to speak. I think that's also what hurt Carey Mulligan's chances. Also, she didn't win. Well, she wasn't even nominated at the BAFTAs, so
Well,
immediately
yeah,
that
that's the
kind of
year they introduced their small jury system.
yeah, yeah, oh yeah, that was the year. But yeah, and then yeah, what was it like the next year? They're like, oh yeah, we're not going to nominate any of the lead actress nominees like Chastain, Coleman, Cruz. Like none of them are going to get in at the BAFTAs either. And I'm like, okay, so we can just rely on SAG this year, and that's it.
And
So I
we
thought that
did,
was.
and I guess we should have relied on SAG the following year, where all 4 winners didn't win at BAFTA, but they won at SAG, then the Oscar.
But I weirdly, but I somewhat disagree with you though, only because it like yes, it does matter if you win either the BAFTA or SAG. It does matter, of course. But I think what's also something that we need to look for in both lead acting races is that if there is a split between the two, it tends to go down to those two at the Oscars. Like, there's probably not going to be like a third person coming through. Like, we're not going to get like a Regina King or a Marcia Gay Harden unless the film is just that strong overall. And it's just kind of hard to predict to begin with when that situation happens. But I do think, though, that if we do have a split between SAG and BAFTA, you kind of have to look at like at the Oscars. Between those two, which of the films have like really like what else could they win besides their acting category, so to speak? Like can Viola Davis win makeup and costumes? Okay, what else can it win? Frances McDormand, we already knew it was a Best Picture and Director sweeper. Maybe with like a chance of Chloe Zhao upsetting in editing, maybe was like the distant runner-up for adapted screenplay. So it's
Well, I
it's just
believe a
things like
number of
that where
people
we
were.
have to keep.
Sorry,
I'm sorry,
I
go ahead.
believe a number of people were actually. I believe Nomadland was the predicted frontrunner for adapted screenplay going into the Oscars, but I stuck with The Father.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, see, yeah, you know what you're doing. Even you and I were like, I don't know about you, but when I saw The Father, I was like, oh, this is. I don't know about Anthony Hopkins. Like, he is dangerously close to winning this Oscar, but this is easily winning the adapted screenplay, no question, because it was the kind of film that, like, from a writing standpoint, it's something that the writers branch would drool over, and it's well crafted, it's well presented, it's well structured, even the themes and ideas of the story resonate with voters. And unlike Nomadland was a much more visually striking movie, but you don't really remember much about the screenplay itself. But you do remember The Father for its structure and writing, like what Florian Zeller and Christopher Hampton did. It just really, I thought it was a fantastic script, honestly. I'm so glad that won adapted screenplay for me personally.
Well, well, yeah, I actually called it from the moment The Father overperformed in Oscar nominations.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Um but yeah, but yeah, no, that's true though. Yeah, as you said though, with lead actress, and I mean even lead actor, we could also say it's like we just need to find out, if we do a split, we have to look at which one is the stronger film overall. And the other thing I also want to bring up, because I don't have it with me right now, but I got my copy of Oscar Wars. I mentioned on the last episode as well. I was reading some more of it on the flight over to Chicago, and I brought up to a couple of my buddies that when Moonlight won was going to upset at the Oscars, it managed to win the Writers Guild, which was pretty much like a fairly easy call looking back on it, that it was going to win Writers Guild Original despite the competition there. But it managed to win the Writers Guild Original category, despite having only 2 days left of Oscar voting. Or it was like, I think it was like maybe 5 days left of voting, of Oscar voting left. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. The fact that, sometimes that also is like a big factor into play of like some of these precursors, because Mikey Madison, she was able to win the BAFTA with like 2 days left of Oscar voting. And then it's like, oh, okay, she's starting to build up some steam right before the voting is done. So that's another thing we also have to keep in mind is like when these major precursors happen, like the guilds or whatever it is, it's like we got to pay attention to see how far left of voting is left, so that way we have an idea of like, could this make an impact on races, on the race here, could it not, things like that. But yeah, but I definitely do think that even though we've already closed the book on this last, Oscar season we were in the middle of, I think it'll be really interesting if we come across this again, where SAG and BAFTA split. We have to look at what's the overall stronger film, like what other major wins could they win.
Yes, and I even told this to Jack Mahanes last night, in that, look, I'm officially never ignoring the setup. Well, the nominee who's almost a stronger contender prevails in the race over a frontrunner with a narrative ever again.
I love you, Jeffrey. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's awesome, because I learned that lesson the hard way last year, and I tried my best to warn some people about it, and it just doesn't always work. Like it did work for Frasier, but I think with Frasier though, the difference was that he was able to overcome the narrative, because of that film just being in a more, like, the ideas and themes of that movie, like The Father, it was more of an emotional impact for voters, I think, because you watch that movie, especially you show it to older voters, they're gonna bawl their eyes out, especially parents who are thinking about the fact that when their time comes where they have to leave this place, and they have to say their goodbyes and make amends with their kids. That's something that's going to resonate emotionally with voters, and it did. And yeah, that's definitely one narrative that worked. I mean, even the King Richard Will Smith narrative worked, although there was no one else that was
Well,
really going to challenge him because he
well,
swept the
well,
whole way.
yeah, I
So
was about to add that. Well, Will Smith was a sweeper, so you have to pay attention if no one swept this particular category in a season.
yeah, so yeah, that's pretty much it for all I wanted to bring up for Promising Young Woman. Actually, the other question I want to bring up: would you, like, in your own personal opinion, would you have given this any other Oscar wins outside of the original screenplay category?
Okay, well, first let me add to the reasons why I predicted Carrie Mulligan to win, which I do
Oh
have
yeah, go
here.
go ahead with that.
Yeah, me. Even though she only had one major win from Critics' Choice under her belt, well, I actually wrote a whole piece for Gold Derby about if whether or not she could do it, like how Russell Crowe managed to win Best Actor for Gladiator despite only winning Critics' Choice that whole season.
Yep.
And although difference was Russell was starring the Best Picture winner while Carrie was not. But anyway, well, Promising Young Woman was seen as a top-tier contender, as it was the only one of two films, the other being Nomadland, that received all the necessary nominations that are usually required to win Best Picture, which would be directing, acting, writing, and editing. Not to mention that both of those films were also the only Best Picture nominees in contention there. So for Academy members, I just felt Promising Young Woman would be higher on their lists of movies to catch up on, other than the other three, Pieces of a Woman, United States versus Billie Holiday, and Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. And, well, of course, there's also a question of how if enough Academy members even got through all of Pieces of a Woman.
Yeah, I yeah, I'm really glad that Vanessa Kirby got her Oscar nomination, but yeah, something tells me that they were just like, yeah, we're not gonna watch the movie because she didn't win a single televised award. It would have been funny though if all of them won, like if Vanessa Kirby won the BAFTA and then Oscar night Frances McDormand wins. Like that would have been the funniest thing ever, to be like everyone in the lead actress category won a televised prize. That would have been so funny. Um, that way everyone gets something, Um, but yeah. But yeah, no, I'm glad. Yeah, like I said, I'm glad you had that talk with Jack about the lead actress thing going forward. So anyways, as I was saying, outside of original screenplay, because it, like I said, it sounds like you're a bit more high on it than I am. With the film, what else would you have given the film anything else in the categories, like actress, editing, director?
Okay, so well, I of course agree with its original screenplay win, especially since Promising Young Woman was my second favorite film of 2020. And even though I'm honestly more positive on Trial of the Chicago Seven than a number of people on film Twitter are, so I wouldn't have minded Sorkin winning, although I personally rank him third in the lineup with Minari as my runner-up. But
Okay.
yeah, I easily agree with Promising Young Woman's original screenplay win. Editing, well, I that's actually the only category where I would have awarded Trial of the Chicago Seven, as I thought, Alan Baumgarten's work on that film, well, he really succeeded in keeping that movie going with such strong pacing, especially, after which I was able to rewatch Trial prior to this, so editing was an Oscar I thought that movie definitely deserved.
Interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm okay with the screenplay win. I didn't get it. I didn't have the time to rewatch Sound of Metal or Judas and the Black Messiah, which I actually thought was a pretty good movie. I remember at the time when I saw it. But yeah, I'm okay with the screenplay win. I'd have to revisit the lead actress race to be like, what do I think of it now, years removed from it? Because I think at the time I would have said Carey Mulligan, but I don't know. Maybe I might have switched. I don't know. I'll look into it down the road. And then
Uh,
editing. Um, Again, I'll have to revisit Sound of Metal because I think I might prefer that a little bit more as an editing winner. Just and also the fact that like we don't get that kind of film editing winner nowadays. I mean, I guess I don't know. It's tough. It's a little bit tough for me, but I guess I'll just stick with the original screenplay win for the time being. And that's it. So yeah,
uh,
I don't really have anything else to add onto the discussion. Uh, do you have anything to add on to like the awards race or anything?
there's three more categories we haven't gotten to yet for me.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so for best director, well, again, Fennell's my runner-up. Where okay, this is another movie I know a number of people on film Twitter are divided on, but I actually would have given it to David Fincher for Mank, even though I do respect Chloe Zhao's win for Nomadland. But Mink was honestly my favorite movie of 2020, so it obviously would have had my vote for Best Picture as well. But Promising Young Woman would have done well on my preferential ballot as I rank it second. Although the Although for Best Actress, I would have given it to Carey Mulligan. So yeah, I would have given Promising Young Woman 2 awards, and had Mulligan won here, it would have served as a nice precursor to subsequent Best Actress wins we got from Michelle Yeoh in Everything Everywhere All at Once and Emma Stone in Poor Things. A performance in this out-of-the-box film that never would have gone anywhere near the Oscars 10 years ago, which we also almost recently got this year with Demi Moore in The Substance.
Yeah, that's a long discussion we could have somewhere down the road. Yeah, well, I don't know why, but I presumed that you would have gone with Nomadland for director and picture. That's why I'm like, yeah, okay, I know where Jeffrey's gonna go. But you surprised me. You went with Mank. Okay, that's interesting. I also would
Yeah,
have liked. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
well, yeah, Nomadland was. Well, I haven't seen Nomadland since getting access to it through a digital screener from, I believe, the New York Festival back in September of 2020. But I remember liking it, but not being as enthusiastic about it as many were.
Mhm. Yeah, that's definitely yeah, it's a movie I remember respecting a lot about it, but I couldn't fall in love with it. Like I understood why it won picture and why it won director, but I was just like it was okay. Um yeah, but I will say but yeah, Fincher for Mank, yeah, he probably would have been my pick for director maybe. Yeah, probably. Yeah, he probably would have been my pick for director. Picture, I don't know. I'll have to revisit the field. Maybe on a rewatch, The Father might be it, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. But yeah, but outside of that though, I don't really have too much to complain about this year. I mean, it's kind of hard to complain about said winners, especially when we had the movies weren't really a priority. Once again, it was just the fact that we lost our loved ones, and we should also point out the fact that when the Academy were voting on their nominees and winners, that about a good chunk of them didn't bother voting because they had other priorities to do. They were just like, we got other things to do. It's like we
Well,
want
yeah,
to
one
we
of
want to
them
spend time
being
with our
the
loved
previous.
ones.
Sorry,
Go ahead, sorry.
another Well, yeah, another priority was, well, we're coming off of a recent presidential election.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, yeah. And again, there were just other things that were going on in our minds than that, or than the Oscars, I should say. Um, but yeah, so yeah, it's yeah, a very interesting year, so to speak. Um, if nothing else, I'm glad I had this discussion and revisit, with Promising Young Woman, because like I said, it had been about almost maybe a little bit more than 4 years since I'd last seen it. And funny enough, it was this season for this Oscars. I can't remember when it was exactly, but I think it was around this time. I got a chance to meet some of my Chicago buddies. I went to see the Oscars with for the first time, because I remember one of them I think it was both of them had seen through a virtual screening of Sundance, Judas and the Black Messiah, and we met up. I met up one of them. It was Nico through text message, and I said like, "How was Judas and the Black Messiah?" And I mentioned him. I was a big Oscar predictor, and that ever since then we've all became friends. At least they were like childhood buddies, and then like what 2 days, a couple days earlier, I ended up flying out to Chicago and meeting him for the first time. So this season was very interesting to say the least. Uh, so yeah, so if nothing else, I'm very grateful for that. Even if the films themselves may not have aged as well as I remembered. But again, it's almost like, that's fine. It's okay. You're not, this is the kind of year where it's like, if we get a great movie, awesome. If not, then oh well, we got next year. So
Hmm.
that's all.
Yes,
So
hopefully, yeah, hopefully we're back on track with just relying on Josh Plum in predicting the Best Actress winner.
yeah, I still cannot believe I managed to get lead actress right. Like I was even texting Jack even too. I'm like, how the hell did I get this right? I had everything going against me, and I got it right. I don't know, because I had a feeling over the last couple, especially like ever since the BAFTA win for Mikey Madison, I thought, oh my god, I can't believe I'm like, this might actually happen. And then when it happened, I thought, oh my god, she did it. I was right. Anyways,
Yeah, Jack
I'm
lost
gonna.
$50 as a result.
Who did?
Jack lost $50 as a result.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah. Anyways, I'm gonna wipe this shit eating grin off my face. So anyways, I just want to say, Jeffrey, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much for coming on the show, dedicating your time to be here to talk about Promising Young Woman. I really hope I could have you back on down the road. But but when that does happen, I just don't know when. It's probably going to be for a bit, because I already have like 4 or 5 guest episodes already lined up. Like as soon as the Oscars were done, they were like boom, 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 and I'm like, okay, so I got my schedule full for a while, but I hope to have you back on the show, because I
Well,
think
hey,
you're an interesting guest for sure, and one that I would like to have more film discussions with, especially on some of these, like, lone screenplay nominees and lone screenplay winners. Yeah.
well,
So,
sure,
uh,
that'd be great.
yeah, awesome, great. So before officially sign off, I would like to thank you once again for coming on the show to talk about the film. Is there anything you would like to plug in where our listeners could follow you along?
Well, there's lots of ways where they can find me. I am on Twitter. Yes, I still refer to it as Twitter, not X. Sorry, Elon Musk, but what's not broke, don't fix it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I am on Twitter at Jeffrey Kare, as well as on Blue Sky, since I do have one there too. And in my profile, you can find a link to, well, in my Twitter profile, you can find a link to the accounts for my blog, Kare Reviews, which does have its own website and podcast. And then if anyone's interested in learning more about my taste in film, I am on Letterboxd, and you can also find more of my work on Broadway World and Gold Derby.
nice. And you could follow me and the show through Linktree under at Matthew995, where you can follow along on all my social media accounts such as Twitter and Letterbox. On the same side, I provide a link where you can listen to more episodes of the show. And if you're interested in being in the hot seat, let me know, and hopefully we can arrange that happening soon. As I said before, my schedule is crazy busy for the next month or so, so even though I'll have you on the list, I'll get around to you down the road. Hopefully by the end of the year, I can get through most of my guests, but we'll see what happens. I was actually surprised. Like I said, I was surprised I was able to get as many as I did, right after the Oscars, because I'm like, oh shit, okay. So anyways, in the meantime, we hope you enjoyed listening to this episode, and we hope to see you at the movies. Take care, guys.